Well, hello once again, friends, and welcome to This Week at Little Hills as we continue our journey through the fruit of the Spirit. We've been thinking the last few weeks about that fruit and what it looks like in our lives. Jim last week talked about kindness. This week we're going to talk about goodness, which goes hand in hand with kindness. What does goodness look like? We've got lots of things good. If something is delicious as we eat it, we say it is filled with goodness. If something goes smoothly, we say there's a goodness to that. What does God have in mind when he talks about the fruit of the Spirit involving goodness? I think we get a sense of that when we turn to 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, where we read these words. Paul writes, "To this end we always pray for you, that our God may make you worthy of his calling and may fulfill every resolve for good and every work of faith by his power." When we think about the other aspects that we're talking about in this series of the fruit of the Spirit, things like kindness, things like self-control, what do we find? All of them involve doing good before God. And this particular word being used here is used of those things that we do that are good in God's eyes, things that are pleasing to him. When we're being kind to our neighbor, like the kindness that we were talking about last week, when we spend time focused on our God and loving God, those things are examples of goodness. And when Paul talks to the Thessalonians about it, his prayer is that the very power of God's Spirit would come and give us the will of goodness, is essentially what he's saying there. We need God's help to will goodness. You think about, say, a jelly donut filled with the goodness of that jelly. It's delicious and wonderful, but the donut itself can't will that goodness. Someone has to put that goodness into that donut. God fills us with goodness. He fills us up that we can reflect his goodness to the world. When we look at the beauty of his world and the goodness of that world, we see his goodness. But then he calls us to be the scenic view for other people, those that as they encounter us, get a taste of God's goodness. How can I show that this week? How can you show that this week? Let's make that our prayer today, that people would see goodness in our lives. Not just that we restrain from doing evil. Not that we occasionally even show kindness. We should restrain from evil. We should show kindness. But people would see our lives and see actual goodness. I hope this encourages you today, and if it does, I think you'll also be encouraged by what we're going to see as we continue our series Everyday Jesus on Sundays, thinking about what it was like for the disciples as they spent time with Jesus in everyday situations and how that plays into our lives, because we spend an awful lot of time in everyday situations. That's why we call it that. How do we show goodness in those situations? How do we show goodness as God calls us to follow him in those situations? So I hope you'll join us on Sunday night, 5:30 p.m. for worship. You can do so online. We'd also love to have you in person if you're in the area. It'd be great to have you there. Either way, you can be a part of a community filled with goodness. I'm so blessed and thankful for the people that God has gathered here at Little Hills. And I hope you'll share in that goodness on Sunday night. I hope you have a wonderful and blessed week, and I'll see you again very soon.